So, hello, I'm Francisco from Neural DSP, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Tue Madsen. How are you, man?
I'm all good. Sun is shining.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we always talk about the weather in the beginning to break the ice. So, how have you been? What have you been up to lately?
I've been finishing the new Sicker for All album, actually a few days ago.
Can you talk about that? Is that all right?
Yeah, it's an amazing album.
Awesome.
It's, what is it, the fifth thing I'm working on them. This time I'm only mixing and mastering. It didn't work out as far as schedules and stuff for the recording, but Jerry Farley did the recordings in New York and Nova Studios, and I'm taking care of the mixes here. And I went to see them in Berlin last Friday, and went to Roskilde Festival after that, and saw Madball play there. It was awesome, good weekend out.
Nice. So you just came back?
Yes.
Okay, nice. Well, for the people that don't know you, who are you, and if you can introduce yourself for the listeners?
Yeah. Well, my name is Tue Madsen. I used to play guitar and a little bit of drums like 200 years ago, but for the past 15, 20 years or something, I have been producing, mixing, mastering mainly metal bands, but a lot of other stuff have come through my studio as well. So anything from The Haunted, Dark Tranquillity, Sick for All, Madball, Heaven Shall Burn, Moonspell. I'm looking at the wall down there because that hopefully puts some name. There's like, I think I worked on something like 200 or 300 records so far. So it's a lot for me to remember all of them. But a lot of different stuff. Deer Grey, Baby Metal from Japan, a few Japanese bands I've been working with. And you asked me what I was doing. A couple of days ago, I was mixing a live song for Baby Metal, which is coming out. It's a promotional video for the Distortion single. I think it's a live, or it is a live version. It's a live version that I mixed. So, yeah, lots of different stuff. Keeps it interesting for me.
That's good. Yeah.
Recently, I was asked to mix a Japanese EDM band with... I don't even know what the artist name is. I don't think it says on the files that I received, but it's like... and that kind of stuff. So, you know, when I get asked to do a lot of really different kind of things.
Oh, that's good, I guess.
And I pretty much... Well, I do say no, of course, but... if I find it the least bit interesting, I like to work on it. It doesn't really, for me, it's not about so much about genres. I like to work on different genres than metal, so it's not only metal that I do, because it's a way of, you know, spreading my brain, or, you know, not fall into the same category of sound and work, ways to work all the time. So I like when something is off center from what I usually do, I find it really interesting. And for that reason alone, I would say yes to do something like that.
Okay, that's really great. And you said that you started playing guitar. How did you play guitar first when you were really young, and then you turned to drums, and all of a sudden you started recording yourself, or how exactly did it happen?
I started playing drums and guitar when I was, I don't know, 10 years old or something like that, 10 or 12 or something. And I joined, we called it bands, but I don't think it was really a band for the first couple of years. But when I was 17, I moved to Aarhus, where I'm still living today. And I joined a band as a drummer. The band was called Desexalt. one of the guitar players later on joined Barcode, hardcore band from Aarhus that some people might know. And I produced a couple of their records. But I was only playing drums in that band for half a year or something. But I wanted to play guitar and I wanted to do more tricky stuff than what we were doing in this band. So I split and formed my own band. It was called Atrocity. The drummer later left us to become a huge pop star in Russia, where he's still a pop star, lives in Moscow. Thomas Nevergreen, if anybody wants to check it out.
Interesting.
And that band turned into a band called Pixie Killers, and later on to a band called Grove, and we put out 5 records. It was never really something big. We started out like really hard metal, and in the end turned kind of, I don't know, Metallica, COC / Deep Purple or something, because we had an
all right.
So I think we were really, really good, but it never really paid off. And then I started, actually when the band started, I started producing a little bit, just recording our own demos on an 8-track in the rehearsal room. Then did it for some friends, then did it for some other friends who heard about that. Then someone showed up with 100 kroner and asked me if we could maybe go to a real studio, and then I started doing that. And I think I bought my first Pro Tools computer in '99.
Interesting. All right.
And from then on, it was pretty soon after that I was starting to actually making a living of it, and it's been like that ever since.
Oh, that's really, really cool. So you started with a very small machine that you had just at home, or what kind of system was it? Like the first machine where you recorded something?
It was a really small system, but it was a lot of money for me at that point in time.
Yeah, of course.
It was I can't even remember the name. What was it? Before TDM, it was Pro Tools. It had these really expensive but no power at all on the DSP cards. I can't even remember what it was called. Before HD and before TDM, it was called something else. I can't remember.
All right, but that far.
But it was, I had this desk you see in the background, which I obviously still have. So I found ways of incorporating the desk even in mixing to save, just to open an EQ was an issue, because you could only open like 10 EQs on one DSP, and there was only 4 DSPs in the system or something like that. So, inserting a channel on the desk and some compressors and stuff to make mixes, and it was really hard.
So coming in and out. So we're talking already like you started already with some kind of digital software or like some kind of digital platform.
But before that, I had been doing a lot of producing in an analog studio with tape machines. So that's where I really started out, and I think that's a big reason for me finding my way to. Maybe it's easy. Pro Tools has always been easy for me because it seems like it's built like an old school analog studio. Like you have 2 windows. One window, your edit window, is your tape recorder, and you got the mixer. And that's, everything is done from that frame of mindset or whatever. It makes sense to me.
I agree. I've also used Pro Tools a lot, and even though I didn't have the chance to work with analog gear that much, I was very, very small when I had the chance to record something on a tape machine. It was just pretty much like pressing record and play, and the band was I was like a mini studio assistant. My job was just to press record and play and not fuck it up, because the the player of the band was the engineer also, so he had to go and play. Somebody had to hit the record button. So that was all my experience with tape machines. But yeah, I've seen, like, I've used some analog consoles, and Pro Tools really resembles that workflow of where all the faders and all the panning system and like everything is really accurate in that sense. It's a very nice evolution, I think, as Pro Tools really nails it in that sense.
Yeah, in that sense.
Yeah, there's many other sense that of course not, but you have the freedom to try something different. For example, I found myself like working with a lot of like virtual synths and virtual instruments, and for me Ableton is like much, like, way better and simpler to work in that sense, like to automate all these lanes and like to map parameters to macro controls and that kind of stuff. Ableton is so much easy to work with. But if I have to record real drums and just start sending, like create aux channels and sending stuff to them and routing back and forth and to external gear and coming back in and that kind of thing, like Pro Tools really works very well. And the playlists are like super amazing. I love them.
Yeah. But I mainly do have to do with real bands, you know, four guys coming into the studio with guitars and we play music. So
Yeah.
For me, it's the workflow is a lot like it was for me 20 years ago. It's that part of it is I still use Pro Tools mainly as a tape recorder. It's a fancy tape recorder where you can cut a lot of tape and stuff, but still it's my mindset, the way that I go about it is the same. I don't want to start out thinking that everything is going to be, I just need to get some shit into the computer and then I can start messing with it. I'm very much like, no, we have to get good takes, you know, play music. Music is an art form invented for people to communicate emotions to other people. And I don't think a computer is better at that. I think people are better at communicating emotions to other people. So as much as I do embrace all the handy tools that you can get in the computer, I think it's important to start out playing music and not just like playing some shitty take and say, but you can fix that. Yeah, I can, but it's not how you make great music in my book.
No.
So.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. How do you think that for example, your musician side, when you started playing guitar and discovering the instruments and having a band, and how much of that do you think that it has affected on how you face a mixing process or production process, and how do you keep things, because you're mentioning all this very important topic that it's how the musicians put their emotions into the tape, not how the tape tries to fix those emotions. So how do you think that these concepts from your times as a musician has influenced your like mixing and engineering process?
Yeah, I was always surprised when people accept that what they had just played was just fixed up and cut into pieces. I would be pissed off if it was me playing guitar and someone started moving my timing around and stuff. I mean, ask me to play it again if it wasn't good. But the timing is something that is your personal signature. And that is why I love Dave Lombardo playing drums in Slayer, or Tom Hunting in Exodus, or Vinny Appice with Dio or Black Sabbath. It's not, I mean, if you fix those guys using Beat Detective, it's not that guy anymore. Yeah. And those are the things that I fell in love with. Not some idiot just fixing everything with 100% Beat Detective. It's like, it doesn't appeal to me in any way. I can work with it. I worked on tons of records that were fixed and copy pasted and, you know, fixed again and stuff. And usually I'd say 99% of the time, I really do get into the music I'm working on. I get excited about the music, and I want it to be, I want to hear it in the best possible way for me personally. But when it has to do with bands that fix everything and copy paste everything and, you know, just fix everything up so it's perfect, I lose interest. I put it on my phone and I can listen to it anytime I want. I just never find myself pressing play on those songs because it doesn't affect me. It's like if it
doesn't move you, yeah.
Yeah, it's like when I go to do my workouts, I listen to the stuff that I worked on. And if it's something that's just fixed and computer perfect, for me, I just start thinking about, gotta remember to pick up the kids at that other place and buy some milk and pay that bill and stuff like that. But if it's naturally played, it's exciting and I can't think of anything else. And I think that's what music should be. It should be, you know, screaming for your attention.
Yeah.
Just be something nice on a bookshelf. That's not metal or punk or hardcore. It's like it should be spitting in your face and smell a little.
Smell a little, yeah. I get your point, yeah. That's also very interesting, like how the industry has moved with this digital era, how it has moved to this kind of workflow. Like everything has to be perfect and polished and hi-fi and very limited and loud and clear, and you know all these concepts are like, I guess that you have seen all this evolution, and at some point you must have said like, hey, this is not right, because probably you also evolved with what on your times using the tape machine, then you evolved to the Pro Tools, and then at some point you said like, hey, this is way too much, I'm not getting there, like this is not right.
I always did it the same way that I felt it should be done. And that's how I got into the business. And when when the first time some scary client called me and said, would you like to work on this and that, like Rob Halford's record, I was, of course, scared shitless. But then I thought, well, these guys are calling me because they heard my records and they like what I do. And all I've ever done is try to satisfy myself. And that made them call me. So if I just continue to do what I think should be done, then I guess I will still be doing a good job for these guys. So that, you know, made me calmer. And I've always done that. I've never jumped the 100% Beat Detective copy paste wagon. I never thought it was necessary. Like I'm in the finishing stages of a new Hatesphere album as well, and Mike Park, who's playing drums there, he never plays the same thing twice ever. He'll just like play the song through and it'll be a good take every time, but we'll do another take, and he'll do different. Some of the fills are, of course, you know, written for that part of the song, so they will be the same every time. But a lot of these fills will be different. So we'll end up with maybe 10 takes. And, you know, sometimes he will lose his drumstick or it'll turn out shit. But then when you go to let's find the better fills for whatever part and then go through all these different takes. And then you go, this one was like, wow. And if you do everything by the computer perfect book, you're never going to get those moments. And that's what makes it exciting for me. I mean, when I hear Mike or whoever is playing drums play something that's like, oh man, when they start a fill and you're like, oh, this is going to be tricky. Oh, is he going to land on his feet? And then, yes, he did. And it's the best feeling ever. But if it's just like, and everything is like put in on the grid, it's just like, yeah, so what? And yeah, you can do like, but if everything is on the grid, like perfectly on the grid, it's impressive, yes, but it doesn't move me.
Yeah, no, I completely get you. Like, things are not natural when they are that's the point of imperfection that makes it interesting.
And people usually mistake this for, yeah, but we don't want to sound like a shit demo band. That's not the case at all. I don't want anybody to sound. I just want you to sound like the really good band that you already are. And I have recorded some drummers who are incredible and on the grid just from playing because they've been rehearsing to be that way. And still someone goes out and uses Beat Detective on them. And I'm like, but this guy is already Mr. Beat Detective. Why would you spend time fixing him when it's not broken? That's what...
Yeah.
And they will have countless arguments or, things to say to me that, oh, it's because this and that. I don't agree. No matter what they have to say, I think that drummer would have been better off sounding like what he actually played because he actually was that incredible to begin with.
I agree with you, and that's also something that has made, now that I think about it a little bit more like deeper, is something that, at least for instruments, like, except of course the vocals are, well, it can also be very fucked up, but still, like the instrument players of a band, all of a sudden, for example, in a band they change the drummer and nobody knows. And then in the old times, at least of records that I remember, like, I don't know, like Ozzy Osbourne's or like Metallica records, well, they never changed the drummer. But anyways, like bands that you know that, oh, this guy is not the same. This sounds different. Like, what? They changed the drummer. This is another dude. And you can hear that it's another dude. He plays different. He plays a little bit laid back or a little bit like too fast on the grid. And that makes things interesting because nobody goes exactly with the metronome. Nobody. So and that, I think that the voice of the overall band is given by rehearsing all together. That's when things like start to mold with each other, because if the drummer starts to rush but the guitar plays a little bit laid back, when they rehearse they get into this momentum that they understand each other, and that's really interesting. That's when things get interesting. Yeah. And also, like, you mentioned something, for example, about that you don't like when bands try to come to you and get everything fixed. Have you been ever in this situation that you have to send them home? Like, guys, go rehearse, call me when you're ready? Or do you just do as like, okay, let's use Beat Detective, and you're not interested in the job, but you just get it done? Or how do you go nowadays?
The first scenario usually is not an option. I mean, they're already here, and the band is probably not from Denmark, so it's not just like go home 200 meters from here. It's like fly back home to Australia or whatever, and all the money will be lost, and I will never see them again.
Yeah,
So usually of course it has happened, and then we find a way of working it so we can actually make an album. It's not, I'm saying a lot of things as to, in the perfect world, I would always do like this, but the world is not perfect. And having said all those things, I think I can quote Heaven Shall Burn, because I don't think they ever made a big mystery about it, but I remember Mike, one of the guitar players, sitting there and saying, if it wasn't for Pro Tools, Heaven Shall Burn wouldn't even be a band. And it's not because they fix a lot of stuff, because they're actually quite real in their recordings, but they do have, and especially in the past, of course now they play way better, everybody, because you can't avoid getting better if you play for a lot of years.
Yeah.
But back in the day, of course, they weren't very good, and they needed all the help they could get from the computer. And, that speaks against everything I just said. But on the other hand, you can't deny that they have made some records that appeals to a shitload of people. And, really speaks their language. And for that reason, that kind of, is the other argument, because they're making music which is important for a lot of people. They're communicating. People like it. So why not
draw the line?
Yeah, why not give them the chance? It's very different. It's very difficult to. I don't even think there is a line that you can draw. I think there's a different scenario for every band in the world, and the same thing wouldn't work for Fear Factory that works for AC/DC, for instance.
Definitely.
And it should be like that. I mean, Fear Factory would never work with shitty drums, and shitty playing. It's all about sounding like a fucking robot. So that's what we need. That's what you need to get out there, of course.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, especially in these engineer forums and stuff, it's like people tend to be looking for the holy grail. Like, what's your favorite amp? I don't know. I don't care. I have 10 amps over there. Whatever makes the guitar player in my studio on that day happy, and what makes me happy on that day, that's my favorite guitar amp that day.
Yeah.
Because it's going to make him sound better. If he likes what he's hearing when he's playing, he's going to play better. If I hook him up with some shitty amp, he's going to play worse. So, of course, I'm going to go with whatever makes him happier. And the same goes for every situation about putting an album together. It's really a lot of things that come into play and will be different each time. I mentioned Heaven Shall Burn. I remember there was a couple of albums back, I reamped one of their records and mixed the album, and the album was done. And then a couple of months later, I was mixing another band from the same area that's, played very close to the same style of music as Heaven Shall Burn. And I thought, great, I haven't touched the mic since. So I can just, plug into that amp and it's going to work perfect. And I did that. And it sounded horrible because it's a different guitar player and everything was different. It was the same, but different. So I had to change everything. I just, okay, that didn't work.
How do we solve the problem?
I change the amp and cabinet and microphones and move everything around until I'm happy again. And that just goes to show, even though you think two things would be the same, they're not. And that's what's so beautiful about music. It's not the same. It's not supposed to be the same. It's supposed to be different. We're supposed to be able to tell the difference between Slayer and Fear Factory and AC/DC. It's not supposed to sound the same way.
Yeah. And a lot of people also apply to jumping already to the mixing process. For example, people always ask which is your mastering chain, or which is your chain for this, which is your chain for what. Of course, some people just want to have a reference if they don't really know how a proper chain is done, that you don't put 10 compressors in a row, or I don't know, that kind of stuff. But definitely everything is different. If you put 10 guitar players to play the same line through the same guitar and same equipment, the treatment might be different, and also it might be different depending on which song is it applied to, or what tracks are covering those, what is around that, what is the theme, what you want to transmit. So that's very interesting. That I just wonder also, how do you also face this kind of overdoing situation in the digital realm that we have been talking about, of editing and copy pasting and everything to the grid? How do you face with this same concept about your mixing approach? Because then again, you tend to do, if only it's needed, then you don't overdo stuff. And how is your experience since you started with using 4 channels and you had to get things done with like 4 channels? I guess that you have a much more wisdom in this stuff, not just throwing plugins on over the place and just, you know.
Yeah. I do like to keep it simple, and then sometimes it turns out it's not simple at all. I've been through that phase where you would just put one plugin after the other, and then another, and then maybe I need a tape saturator. Maybe that will be my magic trick, and then you end up with 10 different tracks or 10 different plugins on say Guitar Track or something, and still you're not happy. And then you try, well, I wonder what it actually sounded with like in the beginning, and then turn everything off and it sounds way better. Yeah. That is something I think a lot of people should allow themselves to actually experience. Maybe what you recorded in the beginning was actually the better sound. That's why you put the microphone there, I hope.
Exactly.
And so I try to always, in my mind, it is keeping it simple. It's about letting the music take me where I think the music is taking me. So it's not like I get a mix project in and then I'm like, I'm gonna make. I don't like the way this kick sounds. I need to turn it into something that I like. Well, maybe this is not that that band or album. Maybe it's this one. And if you just work with the sounds that are on the track, then you will create something that's different than the last time. And I think it would be a better world if every record sounded different rather than everybody using the same Slate sample. And once you sound replace all the drums and you fix them up to be on the grid, where's any personal touch? Where did that go? That's out the window. And then you get records where you listen to 10 different bands and you can't tell them apart, except for the vocalist sometimes going and sometimes sometimes.
How did you end up to that wisdom? Because I guess that I've heard from many producers that they start and for example they nail very nice one of the records that put them out there as an engineer, and all of a sudden like they stick to that. Okay, damn, like if another band comes to me, I gotta do it like this and this and this, and then they try to repeat what they did before to try to nail it again, being scared of the adventure of trying to find a new sound or interpreting the band and then put that into the record to take the best of the band. Like, how was that road for you? Was it completely natural and you always knew that you had your options, or was it a learning path that you did your mistakes and then you figured out that you could do every time things different? How did you face that process?
I just did it. I started out in analog.
That's awesome. But it was that simple.
But really, it kind of is.
That's great. That's really awesome. That's awesome.
I started working in an analog studio with no knowledge whatsoever. It was a bass player in one of my really early bands. He bought a studio and started producing, and that's why he quit the band and we had to do another band and stuff. And so I started doing some projects in his studio, and he had this huge rack with all kinds of stuff, and I was like, that's a lot of lights. I guess the more lights that are moving, the better it sounds. And if you think of that in terms of compression, and how the lights usually work there, you can see how much damage I did on those. And when I think back on what I did, in the early years, it's amazing that some of those records came out sounding as good as they did. But it did sound good because I've always used my ears, I guess. I mean, even though I hopefully, like everybody, did a lot of mistakes and a lot of fucking up, and a lot of saving my own ass probably. It usually turned out okay in the end, and then I took some courses, sound, not like real education, but some sound engineering courses, and only one of them was really. I remember one teacher who was actually really good at explaining sound, like drawing something on the blackboard and say, this is what sound looks like. And when you use a compressor or an EQ or blah, 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 whatever you do, this is what happens to the wave and stuff like that. And that was really eye-opening for me back then, because I was like, oh, so that's why that demo I did for those guys turned out so shitty. And, it's like there was a reason. I just didn't know it when I did it. And, but then you pick up some knowledge. Today, it's a lot easier. But, you can Google everything and get 200 people's opinions. What makes it difficult now is you don't know if you're listening to a bunch of idiots or a bunch of people who actually know what they're talking about.
That's true. That's very true. Like, the forums are a dangerous place to be. And of course, like, it's not only the forums, it's like what people tell you every day in life. I mean, you face people that are douchebags and they just tell you to not do something, and then like, why should I listen to this crap? Like, I just will do what I want. And I think that's very important in life. And you're saying all over and over again that the place where you are right now, it's because you follow your instincts and you just do how things are done by yourself, like how you think that things are done and the way that you like them to be. So I guess that's a very like good path to tell to people, that just follow what you think it's right, and of course use your ears. I mean, that's the best thing to do. And I think that it's very important to have a little knowledge of how instruments are played, at least. Like, it's important for an engineer. We were talking that it's very important to understand the instrument and what's the message of music. You have said that you try to put the message of the music into the speakers and into the record, and that's really, really important. Okay, so let me see what I can edit this part back away, but we have covered almost everything in this. That's awesome. Well, anyway, so for example, going a little bit more specific, since you just go with the flow with the bands, which is great. Like, how do you feel in your setup nowadays after all these years working in different projects, different music styles? You have acquired a lot of knowledge, and probably you just said, like, I don't know, like, I don't need 1,000 different analog EQs to work with my stuff. Like, this is enough. Like, with this I can do what I need and I can get the job done, and that suits me well. What are those pieces of equipment that you like use every day, for example? Like, not going very deep, but something that you use every day that you can count on every time.
Like mic preamps. I do enjoy my it's an EMT desk that I have. I enjoy the red one. I'm moving the wrong.
Yeah.
the red ones in the back, the Golden Age project, pre-73. Since I got those, I have been a very happy man running pretty much everything through them. For recording, that's really good. I have a bunch of mics. None of them are like, I'm not like, I have to have this and that. I can use a lot of different things. I do like my Sennheiser 602 for the bass drum. I do like a 57 and a 414 on guitar. Mm-hmm. But not always. Sometimes this used to be my go-to microphone for guitars for years. ADK A51S, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And I don't have my glasses on, so I don't know what it says.
That's okay. I don't mind that much either, but that's cool.
But that was very much like, I remember doing this when I just bought it. I did the first record I did for Ektomorf, and we just set up for a guide guitar track so we could record drums, and I just opened the door and basically threw the mic in the room and closed the door pretty much. Just like, that's fine. And then went inside, and then I thought it sounded exactly like it did in front of the cabinet when I came in here in front of my speakers. And then I was like, holy shit, that microphone actually picks up exactly what I think I'm hearing in the room. And I used that for a lot of years, but then, you know, your taste changes, or you start focusing on other things and you want to try out different things and stuff. So it's not, I might say something that, I always use a 57 on something. And then 2 months later, you'll hear me say the exact opposite. So pretty much like what I said about bands and stuff. It's like whatever appeals to me on the day. But I have a lot of things that I think sound really good. As far as mixing goes, I stay in the box always, because I'm always working on a lot of different things at the same time.
Yeah.
And using a lot of hardware would make that impossible. And I do like the Waves SSL plugins, although I can't finish my drum sound with those. For some reason, SSL has always worked against me. Even when I was mixing on SSL desks, there's something about the EQ that makes me want to do too much, I guess, is the right way to say it. But I've developed some presets that work really well for drums, and it gets me to a point where, you know, when I record everything clean into the computer, using my presets for the drums will get me to a good drum sound right away. And what I have to do afterwards, I will need my filter bank EQ to do that, or metric halo EQ. Those are the only two I like. And I know maybe it's mumbo jumbo and stuff, but at some point I got pissed off with them because they did an upgrade where they removed the phase inverse button, which pissed me off, and they removed the sliders, which I had grown to depend on. Now I'm getting used to it. It's not a problem for me. I'm still missing the phase inverse button though, but then so I didn't want to do the upgrade. I was like, why would I want to pay $100 for getting something that can do less? And I was just pissed off with them. So I tried the next record I wanted to do. I decided to, I'm going to try and do this with, because I just upgraded to Pro Tools 11 or something at the time.
Yeah.
And there was this channel strip thing that was new in Pro Tools, and I thought, well, that's probably good enough and can do the job for me. And I worked really hard on mixing that record until I got to a specific song where they wanted a specific kind of, telephone, radio, voice or something for a vocal part. And I was like, damn, because you couldn't get those same filters as you could with the filter bank one. So I was like, I'll buy the damn thing. And then I bought it, the upgrade, and put it on. And then since I bought it, I might as well, open my filter bank on the guitars that I wasn't really happy with yet. And then I put it on, and in 20 seconds, I had the sound that I was looking for. So I don't really care if I think there's some kind of magic powder inside that plugin. probably some kind of distortion that happens or something. And now some people will be like, yeah, I did a zero test and I did this and that, and there's absolutely no difference between that and this. I just know that if I have filter bank, I'm going to get
what you want,
the sound I want in 2 seconds. And if I have something else, I have to struggle.
Yeah, all that workflow is very important. I guess that like during the years, one start building this toolbox. And then you just go when you have something in mind. There's nothing more precious of putting something in the software. If it's a plugin or if you like analog gear, go out and do it in like put your mindset on what you're thinking and achieve it in almost no time. When the machine and the software starts getting in the way, in the creative way, then you're overthinking or you don't know how to use your stuff. So that's very important. That like you seem to have a good workflow with your toolbox, and when you have something that you need to face a problem, you have this toolbox and you solve it and you change it or you do something different, and then you just throw a different mic, and why not? That risk is something that people should really take. And like I had the chance to. Like I haven't been producing so much with analog equipment or many. I have never had like before, like never much access to microphones and try them in a proper recording room and go to listen with good monitors in a control room. But I spent 1.5 years in a studio of a friend, and he had super nice studio and super nice collections of microphones and an SSL desk, and I was just playing around. I was not reading. Like, okay, some inches of the tom have to be recorded with the 421 mic. I just tried stuff, like I like the Audix D4 more than 421. Like, I just liked it more for what I was doing back then, and now I know the difference in my mind. If I put the same mic on the same tom, I know, my mind tells me which one to go with, and I just make the right decisions right away. So you have been growing this toolbox over the years, and like, would you agree on that?
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like I have same mics. I have people will always say, yeah, the 421 for toms. Yeah, but for a lot of years I used 57s on toms, and then I bought some cheap Chinese 57 type microphones. I don't even know the name. I don't even think they had a name on them, and they just turn out to be sometimes better, and they were like 20 euro or something I paid for them, or maybe less, I don't know. It's not to say that cheaper is always better, because cheap Chinese shit is sometimes really shit. But sometimes you can get lucky, and like way back when I didn't even have a studio, someone told me we needed for rehearsal room recordings or something, like to get one of these drum kits, like a bass drum, snare, and a couple of tom mics and overheads in a suitcase, and that was really some shitty microphones in that suitcase. But the bass drum microphone, which was a horrible bass drum microphone, but turned out to be really good on floor toms. That really low floor tom where a 57 or a 421 or something is not going to be able to pick up the low end in a way that you can use it in the mix. Yeah. But this bass drum mic picks it up perfectly, and it was awesome. It was my 16 or 18 inch floor tom mic preferred thing for years and years. Now it's fallen apart, I'm sorry to say, but
that's great. What have you been what have you been trying out lately? Like, I guess that you also are this kind of person that wants to try new stuff all the time. What have you been trying out lately that you want to comment, for example? Something new that you did, something crazy that you have never done before, or? I've been doing some stuff with TCE Electronic. I know the guys, and the company is here in town, that way.
They're doing some reissues of some of their old, what's it called, vintage or like older studio machines like the 2290 and the 1210 that they're gonna do as plugins, but with little controls. So now you need a pedal board on your desktop right here to handle it. But it's kind of cool. I'm looking forward to trying those out in real mixes. I've recently got which is not a fancy hardware vintage thing, but the Darkglass plugin for bass, which is amazing for me. Like the day I got the download, I was mixing the first song for the new Hatesphere record, which is coming out as a single, I think, as we speak. The deadline was a week ago, so I think that they must be releasing a video very soon. And I had been struggling a little bit with some different pedals and stuff on when we recorded the bass. And
then you dropped the Neural DSP plugin in, and
everything was wiped out. It was like, bam, that's the bass sound. And I guess I kind of knew because Dick from Meshuggah is using the some of those pedals in his pedal chain, and the bass sound on that last Meshuggah album is pretty much only his signal chain through the pedals. We had an Ampeg stack there that we ran everything through, and I mic'd it, and I really liked the sound I got. I blended in the mics with his signal and stuff. And then when he started playing with his headphones, he was like, do you have the microphones on in my mix? And I was like, yeah, it sounds amazing, right? Yeah, could you turn down the mics a little bit? And then, 10 minutes later, could you maybe turn down the mics a little bit more? And in the end, it was like, I just left like this much in there. Just
minus 30 dBs of mic.
minus 80. But just, to feel like it wasn't just wasted miking that cabinet. It needed to be in there. So it is on the record. But you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if I muted it. So what you hear on that record is pretty much his, chain of pedals, which is, I think Darkglass is one of them.
Yeah, he uses the B7K Ultra there.
Yeah.
So the same model that is on the Neural DSP plugin.
And it really does sound awesome. And his sound on the record is awesome as well, and it fits perfectly with Meshuggah and the whole soundscape, and it works really well. I've been using it on a lot of different things since I got it, different mixes as well, and it's.
What is the most crazy track that you have thrown that plugin into?
So far, I have been limiting myself. There was a vocal and a keyboard thing, but that didn't really work out for that particular part. But bass is what I've been using it on so far, only for bass.
That's great to hear.
But it's a distortion that it sounds it sounds really good on bass. It cuts. It has the distortion in just the right areas, so you can go crazy with it and like distort it like. Really hard distortion without losing the definition of the bass.
Yeah.
And still get that punchy thing that you need from the bass, that extra bass drum or something. So, yeah, that was a really nice addition.
That's great to hear. We have worked hard for that plugin, and it's our first product, so I'm really happy that you like it. Have you ever had the chance to get your hands into the analog product, like apart from that Meshuggah time, or did you tweak it yourself, the analog one?
Like with the Meshuggah, and I've had the pedals in the studio a few times, but then it's always like with Meshuggah, like a bass player coming in with a specific sound, and I like try to change values on the buttons, but it usually turns out that the guy put it that way because that's the way he wanted it to sound. So,
Exactly.
so it's, then it's quickly over. You do a bit of this and that. Okay. Yeah, but I like that. Okay, we'll leave it like that. And then and then work it from there. So I wouldn't say I know the hardware version very well, but I've had my hands on it a couple of times, yes.
That's great. Yeah, the plugin has its benefits also. You can process like stereo signals right away, and like some advantages. You can switch from the like VDU distortion a little bit more mid-range vintage somehow. It has the same amount of drive though. It can also be a nasty monster. But on the other hand, like you're one click away of like listening both distortions at the same time with two different EQs. The choice of the sound comes much more faster than if you would have to plug all those pedals in a row.
Oh.
That's really good to hear. Yeah, well, I think that this was really great interview, man. I really hope that we can surprise you with some more Neural DSP products, and I'm really happy that you liked it.
I do.
Well, thank you very much for participating of this. This was Tue Madsen with us with Neural DSP Inside the Machine podcast, and see you next time, man.
I'll be here.